I'm CraigO, and join me on my adventures with CraigO's cryptocurrency as we cover the blockchain, Web3, NFT, and cryptocurrency technologies. Interviewing the best in the industry, giving tips and tricks, and also sharing with you projects that I'm most excited about. You're tuning into CraigO's Crypto Corner, the best in Web3, blockchain, NFT, and cryptocurrency technology. Great reviews, incredible interviews with the leading people in the Web3 ethos, and just the general things Web3. Happy and a healthy new year for 2023. May everything health, wealth, and happiness come to you and your family. Humility and kindness is key, is how I would describe today's guest. Steve is a powerful voice on Twitter Spaces as the co-host of the Daily Morning Show, Coffee with Captain. I listen in daily. Steve Kaczynski, known as NFT Bark on Twitter, has co-authored the first Harvard Business Review article around NFTs with his business partner and friend, Scott Duke Cormiers. They are also in the process of writing a book about NFTs with Penguin Publishing to demystify the new technology and share a framework for success in this novel industry. Steve co-founded the Decentralized Generation Network, a trusted Web3 media company that consults with businesses on their Web3 strategy, including native NFT brands and large legacy organization. Steve's past lends perfectly to his breadth of experience in the Web3 space. He has 15 plus years of experience in communications and marketing, leading multiple disciplines at Fortune 500 and multinational companies. When he's not engulfed in the metaverse, you can find Steve with a cup of coffee in hand, spending time with his wife and 2 children. Through our conversation, let's see if we can demystify this incredible space we find ourselves in. Welcome, NFT Bark. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Craig. How are you doing?
I'm good. So, we're going to have a great conversation today. A lot of questions for you in what you're doing in the space. But before we do that, I want to just a couple little house notes. First is I want to welcome everybody in who's tuning on Twitter Spaces. This is going to be a great conversation today. Also want to welcome people in on YouTube and Facebook as well. We believe in bringing our Web2 family over to the metaverse in Twitter. So let's go. I also want to let you know that today, and I don't do it for every episode, but something that's important to show our audience love and also our guests is that we do a gift contest sponsor giveaway. Today is by Drivers. I'm going to talk to you about a bunch of things, about 11 things I want you to know about this particular project. And we're going to be giving a one away to our audience. And then I have a surprise for my good friend, NFT Bark. So let's get to it, my friend. What do you believe are the key ingredients to a strong NFT community?
Well, yeah, I mean, to me, I step back and I think, what are the key ingredients to a strong NFT brand or company? I've tried to increasingly remove my use of the word project, just because to me, project, it sounds a little bit more, I don't know, not quite as professional as starting a company. So to me, the key ingredients come down to a few things. I would say the first thing I look for is the leadership and the team. That's at the top of my list. So to me, do they have professional experience? They don't have to, but if they don't have professional experience, what are they bringing or how are they running things that make me want to invest in them? I'm a big believer in investing in people at the top level of what they're doing. The second thing I look at is their utility. What are they saying? Because I think a lot of people get into an NFT project thinking, and there I went and said a project, right? They get into an NFT and they buy it with the idea of number go up, and that's their only goal, right? To me, I try to look at what the stated utility is going to be, just because to me, if I'm buying something, this is all speculative anyway, so I want to have a lot of fun along the way. To me, number 3, if there is an existing community, it is that community itself, which is, what is their vibe, right? Because, apes have a vibe. Doodles community has a vibe. Moonbirds have a vibe. You know what their brand is, right? They're strong brand. Doodles want to color the world with joy. Moonbirds are art and tech focused, right? You can go down the line and look at any brand and find a really strong one, and it ties back to a really strong identity. And a lot of times the communities are the ones that foster that identity, right? To dig deeper into your question now that I've sort of said that, and sort of funny part is the last thing I tend to look at is art, because at the end of the day, unless I'm buying art for art's sake, the art is just simply the thing connected to the token, right? The token on the back end is what the art is pointing, is what is pointing to the art. but it's the token that gives you the access. There's sort of that separation. We learned that a lot with Moonbird CC0, that the token and the access matters more than the art in most cases. To get more specifically in community, I think one of the things that always comes to my mind, there's a part of a book by Seth Godin called Tribes, where he talks about how beyond the actual leadership in a community, you need sort of these younger, or not younger, sort of community leaders that emerge that maybe aren't the team running the project, but they become individual leaders in the community, right? And we've seen this a ton with all the major communities you've seen, right? Like Doodles have different people who are doing memes all the time, and JKB have a show. We've seen this with apes across the board, whether it's people creating brands like Ape Water or people running daily spaces that are directly related to the project. These local community leaders, On-Chain Monkey is a great example, where I think On-Chain Monkey, you have, Stephen Miller running community spaces that are, unrelated to the brand. You have other people who run community spaces. You have these sort of like people who step up as individualized leaders. And I think the strongest communities have people who are not necessarily looking at how they're going to exit from the brand. You have people who are saying, how can I enrich the brand? Because that's one of the key part of, I think, any NFT PFP community. So I think those local sort of like almost like startup community leaders that maybe are on the team, and some of them get added to the team. We've seen it happen with like mods or like Thread Guy getting added to Jenkins the Valet, things like that. But I do think that is like a key component, because that's how you know you're going to be able to vibe with people. So it's the brand of the community, like what are they saying and what's their sort of vibe? Are these people that I want to hang out with? And then two, are those community leaders in place to continue to push it when the team themselves is actually working on the product? So I'd say those things go into community for me.
Multifaceted team based around technology, the fundamental, the look, the feel of different communities. We had on NFT God, and he said, I don't want it to be called in next year. And I kind of agree with him. Let's start calling it digital asset, or you're getting a token within a community / business, right? Because we're developing, we're growing, we're learning, we're reaching. But one of the things that you said, which really is true, is I look at first as who are the leaders. And I like to see all different age gaps in that leadership. I like to see all different backgrounds in that leadership, because you're getting multifaceted opinion. And then I'd also say that Web 2 experience into Web 3 is great. But if you don't have people who understand the culture of Web 3 and how people are communicating, sort of the GMs or the FREN or HODL, or just understanding the mentality and the psychology in Web 3, you might run into trouble. So you want Web 2 to converge with Web 3, and you want both mindsets, and you want a multiple of discipline and talent skill sets within that community. How did you become such an on-demand Twitter Space host? And the reason I ask this question is, in my podcast, in my environment, I feel extremely comfortable here. And I was just saying how grateful I am coming into the new year. Maybe a little bit of nerves, but not much. And that to me is grateful. I don't take it for granted. But when I listen in on spaces and you'll be called up to stage, there are a couple of techniques for myself that I'm doing, because I don't get to see your face. I don't get to see visually if you're intently listening to me and if I am connecting with you. So it's a little bit of a challenge. What were a couple tricks to becoming better at being on Twitter Spaces? And then the second part, how did you become so on demand where On-Chain Monkeys, when they're doing something big, you're their guy?
So I think a couple things. Before I answer your question, you had two really insightful points there that I thought were really good that you mentioned. I think the one that you mentioned about the term NFT, just to give a perspective. So we had Will from Cryptoys, which is a amazing sort of like really cool startup project built on Flow. Will had mentioned like he looks at the term NFT like MP3. We don't say MP3 anymore. When the technology was new, we talked about MP3s quite a bit, but ultimately, it's just music. And I think that applies to NFTs in the sense that, just when I go to a football game, I don't say I'm grabbing my QR code to go to the football game. I just say I'm grabbing my ticket. And I think NFTs are the engine that powers things. So I just thought you brought up a really good point there, as well as the point of diversity and how important that is in communities, because it's not by accident that companies with diverse leadership are more successful than ones that are not. And that is a numbers-based piece, as well as obviously an ethics-based piece of equal opportunity when your sort of base of your company matches the general population at whole. So I just thought you brought up two good points there before I answer your question, and I appreciate you bringing that up. As far as like working on hosting Twitter Spaces, this is just something I've always done. at my senior year of high school, there were a few people who gave speeches. The president of the school, there was a person who studied abroad and was coming back to share like her experience. There was the valedictorian, and then there was some schmuck who won a speech contest, and that was me. I had no business giving that speech, but I just happened to be able to speak well and write well and tell stories. It's just something I've always been super comfortable with. Yeah. My first job out of college, actually in college, I was the sports director at the student TV station at Ohio State, the first one at that station. So I was always on air. My first job out of college was a TV news reporter. And when I've been at previous jobs, wherever they are, I tend to be the go-to person. So when Baker Mayfield signed with Progressive, a company I worked at, they needed someone to host a 5,000 person pep rally. They went to me. It wasn't really in my job or my purview, but our CMO had always kind of pulled me when I was in his organization to host things when people would come in to speak. So it's just an area I'm comfortable with. The thing I think a lot of Spaces hosts miss out on is I think they do make it largely about themselves more so than their audience, right? And at least for me, and it depends on your goal of what you're doing, right? If you're doing a 2-person radio show and that's it, that's great. The spaces I tend to lean into and like is I want to actively listen to my audience and I want to figure out what are the things they're saying that's bringing a lot of value, because I do think every individual in this space is early and smart and able to be here for a reason. And while, we're not going to tolerate people who are being hateful, our big mantra on Coffee with Captain is disagree without being disagreeable. And the reason is I think that all perspectives matter. And I've changed my mind plenty of times on that stage because people have brought up really intelligent thoughts. And so for me, when I'm going to someone, I want them to present their best selves. I do it with interviews as well, right?
Yeah.
When I bring on a leader in an interview, I want them to present their best selves. So I think actively listening and trying to help speakers, one, be super comfortable, because if you're in a Twitter space in front of, we had the other day, we had Ray, the 9gag CEO, on with the Captain's Mitt coming up, and there's 700 people in the room. And I don't want someone coming on stage to ask Ray a question to feel nervous or uncomfortable. So I want to create a comfortable, inclusive environment. And then when they say something, I want them to feel heard and understand the point they were trying to get across and help them reiterate it. And that's just something that's natural to me when I'm hosting. And that's the thing I've gotten the most positive feedback on. It's not intentional. It's not something I set out to do. It just sort of happened. And it's become something that I've gotten really positive feedback on from friends about how I'm able to continue to host. And I think with On-Chain Monkey, it's a similar thing. It's just, making On-Chain Monkey shine. It's not about me. It's about hyping up the brand. It's about helping them out. And it's about hosting those to make sure their news gets across in the most entertaining way possible.
And by the way, that to me is a perfect example of when you use the word inclusiveness as it has an applicable and something that can be applied and not being political. I'm very independent right down the line. I connect with everyone. You said two things. One is you said that I like when there's disagreement, we can respectfully disagree, but I always find that opposing opinions in a room, whether it be up or down, I don't want to do left or right, up or down, where you'll meet in the middle. And when you meet in the middle, you'll come to a conclusion that works for everybody. 1, 2, you also made mention that you want the environment to feel comfortable. You want that when that person comes up to the stage to talk to someone, and I don't want to say big, but someone who has accomplished themselves in a short amount of time early on in Web3. And we're so early on that they're able to come on and feel comfortable on stage. And you also mentioned another thing, a third thing, which is I intently listen to my audience so I understand what they want and need as they build. So that to me is like the learning alpha, and it's something that I will take as I'm growing in this space, is to really take the time to listen, to have that engaging conversation, because everyone's different. I could ask someone a question and it might take a minute. Some, it might take a little bit longer. And then from that, am I intently listening to repeat back what you're saying? And I think Twitter Spaces does that. And an earlier example, being at 45, is I remember when AOL chat rooms were a thing. And I said last night on a Spaces, and it just got to come up to the stage, and I said, guys, I said, I'm talking to a lot of 20-something and 30-somethings. I said, guys, AOL, when I was in the chat rooms, the ethos of conversation and the connectivity is exactly the same. So I want to ask you, 5 years from now, all right, I'm going to switch gears on you real quick. What do you think SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, our good buddy, what do you think he's going to represent from a standpoint of historical significance in the world and in Web3? What do you think this means right now, but 5 years down the road?
Yeah, I'll give a kind of a hot take on this, I suppose, is that I think we'll look back and realize it was a moment of a turning point in regulation, which I actually think is good for both the crypto and NFT space as a whole. Now, I know that that's something that I've been poo-pooed on quite a bit when I brought it up on Twitter Spaces, but I firmly believe that for people to utilize this technology, which can fundamentally disrupt every industry,
Right.
we do need to have solid rules and regulations. You know, you have really intrepid brands like Starbucks and Nike who are always on the cutting edge of technology, you know, coming into this world and saying we're going to give it a try. But a lot of brands are a little more hesitant. Now we're seeing more and more as you know, like someone like Ryan from Polygon, the CEO over at Polygon Studios, is helping bring in so many big brands, which is awesome. And so he's making them more comfortable. But that level of comfortability, I think, comes from a lot saying, where's this going to net out? What's the security? What's not? What are the rules? And I've been pretty steadfast that the way we're defining these assets is we keep trying to define them by existing things we know. And at the end of the day, everything is different. Not only is there nuance to NFTs, because we've never had this thing where you're simultaneously an investor, a shareholder, and part of the brand, right? All at once. But
say that again. That was brilliant.
Oh, you know, to me, it's like, not only have we had this, we've never before had this situation where you are simultaneously sort of a shareholder, a customer, and part of the brand all at once. Like, it's a whole different asset class.
Yep.
And so to me, not only do NFTs themselves have a whole different definition that needs to be written and will probably take years to do, but the use cases of NFTs are going to have different definitions, right? Someone who buys a ticket to a NBA basketball game and uses that, and that's tied to an actual NFT so it can be bought and sold more transparently, helping prevent fraud, can then scan into the game and ultimately get a POAP type thing, like a proof of attendance protocol that shows they were at the game. But then a local restaurant can say, anyone who has attended the game, we're going to give one free drink to. And so just come here and scan your ticket, which I assume Apple at some point is going to acquire something like a token proof, so it all just goes through your mobile phone. And so that is a very different asset than a Bored Ape Yacht Club. While they fundamentally both exist on the blockchain, they both serve very different purposes than that, or even a soulbound token like a driver's license, which will ultimately likely be on the blockchain as a soulbound token that you can replace over time and verify things pretty quickly. So I think those soulbound tokens, or like a soulbound token like a alumni association to a university showing that you graduated there or your degree, those are all very different. And I think all of them are going to need several different types of defining as to what it is and how it's used. Because obviously I'm not selling my degree and that'll be soulbound and not happen, or my driver's license, but it still is issued as an NFT. So what does that mean versus a ticket versus a Bored Ape Yacht Club versus an on-chain monkey? It's all different.
SFT, NFT, POAP, soulbound token. There's so much going on. And whenever I talk to anybody outside, you know, whether it's in Facebook or, you know, just in general chat or just in person at a coffee shop, Craig, you know, what's this Web3? What are these NFTs? And I'll say it's a better version of the internet. And over the next 5 years, you're going to see so many changes on your, what we call smartphone. And sometimes you have to unplug from that. And that's one of the things that, you know, I'm trying to, as I elevate, working out, taking care of myself, because we are sometimes, not sometimes, a lot, we're on an oxytocin high. We're talking about what we're passionate about. We're on social media platforms. We're from screen to screen. And sometimes it's overload. Like last night, you know, I was just in prep, just in case, you know, as I know you weren't feeling good. I'm so grateful you're here today. I just started writing and created a whole bunch more content of stuff that I think is relevant. So it's very interesting that at night, when you don't turn off your screen at a certain or specific time, you're in trouble, at least for me. You know, it's kind of, don't worry about being at the bar, worry about getting off your computer or your smartphone and actually turning it off and shutting down and refreshing, I think is the most important thing. You know, where did your journey, and we will talk a little bit about the Harvard Business Review, but where did your journey initially start with NFTs? Call them digital assets for today. Where did it start? What was that first experience? Who was the first conversation?
Yeah, I'm going to give a little bit of a longer story because it's actually a very personal story that goes back to, I would even say my journey with NFTs started, oddly enough, when I was probably 12 years old, which is going to sound crazy, but I'll explain. So I've always been someone who's interested in early tech. It's not that I'm smarter than anybody else. It's not that I'm, you know, more, you know, have more ingenuity than anybody else. I just think tech is cool. I always have. So when I was a kid in 6th grade, I remember the first time I got on the internet. I remember that crackling sound from the modem, and it represented freedom to me. And I remember getting online, and one of the first things I did was teach myself HTML. Now, mind you, this is before the days of Google, because I wanted to build web pages as a kid. I thought it was so unbelievably cool that I could code something into existence, and somebody in Paris, France could type in that address and they could see what I was doing. It was unbelievable to me. Now, as I did that, one of my learnings was that I was going to be doubted quite a bit, and tech has sort of doubters along the way. And unfortunately, adults and even teachers told me, that's great, but not every business is going to need a website. People go to stores. This doesn't really do a lot. There's ads that go out in the mail. You need to figure out what you're doing when you grow up. So I decided to sort of shelve that, and I still played around with it over the years, but I listened to a lot of people who were ultimately wrong about where the future was headed. Flash forward to the social web. When that came out, I was one of the earliest people on Facebook, I would say, like 2004, 2005 type range. I was on Twitter in 2009, I believe, 2008, 2009. And I remember thinking how cool it was on Facebook. My first friend who added me was a person I hadn't seen since grade school. He was the first person who went and found me. And here I was reconnecting with this guy, Charles, that I grew up, that I was friends with. Never would have happened without Facebook. I thought that was magical. I thought Twitter was particularly magical. One of the most seminal moments in communications, I still think, is when the plane landed on the Hudson River, and the very first reports didn't come from a news station or a helicopter. The pictures were taken from Twitter, from people who took pictures on the ferry going to pick up the people with the plane that landed on the Hudson. Right. Once again, I had people say, look, nobody cares about what you ate for breakfast, so this is stupid. And so I kind of shelved it to the side and again left social media, which ended up being big. YouTube's another one that I was super early in the early Philip DeFranco type days when I was watching him when he was doing top 10 lists. So that's a throwback. And then I won't dive into it too hard, but I had a simpler thing that happened in 2018 when I got into crypto. And again, everyone's like, crypto's a scam. It's not going to be any good. And I remember that when I was into crypto, the thing I was most obsessed with was Ethereum. Because I actually said, I would tell people, my poor team at the time, I was leading recruitment marketing at Progressive, and I would whiteboard them what cryptocurrency was. And I would show them the idea of smart contracts with Ethereum and how Bitcoin worked. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I said, Ethereum will be more important than Bitcoin because you can build businesses on it. But we just hadn't seen it. Flash forward, we're in 2020. And again, everybody told me crypto was stupid. When it crashed, I said, I guess they're right. I cashed out. And then in 2020, I discovered NBA Top Shot. Now, I'm into the collectibles. My dad has a major baseball card collection. I've always been into collecting stuff. And so I thought this was cool. It was like a digital collectible. And then I started Googling. People were saying this is an NFT. And when I Googled what an NFT was, now granted, NBA Top Shot is built on Flow, but when I Googled what an NFT was, it said basically a business built on the Ethereum blockchain. And that was a click moment for me. I was like, okay, this is the thing. Built on the thing that I was obsessed with in 2018, built with the thing that I was obsessed with in 1996. And I told myself, look, I've run through a long career. I don't want to be 80 years old and not think I took the shot. So I'm going to learn everything I can about these things. And from that moment on, it was NBA Top Shot. My first NFT I minted was actually in Art Blocks when I heard an interview from Kevin Rose. I remember where I was when I heard that interview and then went home to mint. And from then on, it's been off to the races.
I love it. Last year in 2021, when you said NBA Top Shot, it was actually my good friend who's also a minority owner in our CraigO's Crypto Corner podcast, Sean Rosenfeld, who's actually on Twitter Spaces right now. Shout out to my good friend. He showed me one night, and this is sort of where the launch of this idea is he showed me Vivi in the same night as NBA Top Shot. Now, I didn't take to NBA Top Shot. For all of you NBA Top Shot fans, holders, builders, shareholders, much respect. It just didn't connect with me because I was never one to watch those types. I wasn't about moments. But with Vivi, I saw the collectibles and I was like, this is amazing. And my Superman, I bought for 125 gems and I sold it for, I think, 7,500 gems at the top. Now, mind you never time a market perfectly. But when you just said that, so I didn't go to sleep that entire night. My wife comes down to the kitchen next morning. She's like, why didn't you come up to bed? I'm like, honey, we're going to be rich. No, I'm kidding. I'm not rich. But I said, I found something that I'm going to be very passionate about that I think can generate building in a platform. And then early on last year, I said to my friend at lunch, I said, hey, want to start a podcast? Yeah, go get me the information. And then here I am at Downtime TV Studios, and the rest was history. But I love what you just said as far as NBA Top Shot and VV capturing your attention, and then how you looked it up and it verified everything for you and what you were saying years earlier. So maybe the alpha learning right there is whatever you're doing, if you believe in it, steadfast, you put your head down and you build. And you're going to have naysayers. The people that closest to you are going to be the ones to doubt you the most.
It's true. I mean, I've seen that throughout my career or throughout my life, really, when I looked at things in the technology world. And look, frankly, like, I'm grateful for the journey as it happened, because it let me go and have an amazing experience at Progressive, an amazing experience at Nestle. Let me be a TV reporter. Let me live a life where I did things I wouldn't have otherwise done, and probably a skill set that I can now apply and bring to this world in maybe a unique perspective, which I really like. So, it's definitely something where I could have had a different trajectory if I had been steadfast about my beliefs. But at the same time, I'm grateful for, the journey I've taken and how I've got there. I also saw Dario in the comments, by the way. Dario is a great one. Dario De Siena.
Yep.
Appreciate you, Dario. I remember the day that Dario's third eye minted. I still remember being on the Twitter Spaces when it was minting out and hearing the excitement from him. And actually, the very first NFT thing I printed out, anybody who watches the stream can see I have tons of NFT stuff all over the place. And
we're
my background,
that, my friend.
but Dario De Siena in my living room over my piano, I have Dario De Siena's Third Eye, which I printed out almost immediately after buying. And it's one of the best conversation pieces I have, because it opens the door to have a conversation about Web3, about this amazing, amazing artist who exists in Web3, but has a background in, again, I sort of marketing and sort of that life as well. So very much appreciate Dario.
And by the way, I'm humbled because I had the opportunity as well, not only to connect with you, but I also had a call with Dario as well. We had a nice conversation. He is the artist of Rotten Antisocial Club. What a great community. Shout out to Ramborno for Rotten Radio. He does a lot of great things in the space. And I just love the cohesiveness of these groups because they're building in Twitter, but the ultimate metadata are the artists, right? There's no promise of utility. There's no direct roadmap. And Dario shows up every time. I share in common with you, I have a third eye as well. And I believe I have, I want to say 15 pieces of trash, maybe more. And I'll probably grab some more of the trash, as we call it, going to zero. But I love him as an artist. I think he's incredible, very humble guy. And I'm looking forward one of these days, Dario, to some merch one of these days. Now, one of the things I want to do before we get going further into this is, can you do a quick screen share, Tony? So someone who's a raving fan of yours,
Sophia.
So Sophia had me on her Twitter Spaces about a month ago. It was actually after I wasn't feeling good. You're probably in that same spot, just recovering. And she is such a humble human being, super talented, her and her Twitter Space partner. And I was just an honor just to be there and be present with them. We can come off a screen share now, but she had nothing but the world of nice things to say. Again, you're just liked by everybody, which is good, If you could give one piece of advice to someone new stepping into the space, what would it be from your end?
Into NFTs or into like content creation like that?
Let's just go the umbrella of Web3. What would be the first thing they should do?
The first thing you should do is you should start showing up in Twitter Spaces and listening to everything you can, and realize that it's going to take you some time to separate the signal from the noise, right? There are people who pump their bags and then dump on other people out there. I think that's lessened in the bear market. It's one of the reasons I'm extremely optimistic for when the next bull run comes around, because I think the bear has flushed out a lot of the rent seekers and a lot of the people who are here now when the next wave, like one of the reasons Web2 people are so skeptical of Web3 is because Web2 people come in, they show up, and then they have people who dump bags on them, and maybe they don't get the best information. Similarly, Web3 people are skeptical of Web2 because a lot of Web2 companies have come in, been less authentic, and then you lose money on that. So there's this sort of like debate. There's this issue there. What I think is going to help with that is right now, everybody I was talking to when I was down at Art Basel, every single person was working on something or so enthusiastic that they came down to Miami. And I think that the recommendation I would have for people who are coming in right now is show up on Twitter Spaces, show up on Twitter, follow the right people, read everything you can. This is what I did. I just consumed all the content I could right when I got in, and then learn to separate the signal from the noise. Who's really out there, telling the truth? Who's in it for themselves? What are their actions? Right. Potentially paper trade a little bit if you want. So pretend like you're buying something, pay attention to it, see if it goes up, if that's what you're into, or paper trade from a community perspective where you buy something and then fake buy something and then go into their spaces and see if like what that community's like, right? Talk to people within the community that seem to interest you and really start to suss out what you want to be in this world. So do you just want to be a consumer who's, part of a community? That's awesome. And those people are the best. So what community do you vibe with? A little bit of time and research will tell you that.
Yes.
Do you want to build something down the line? Like, do you see opportunity? That's great. Do you want to be a content creator? That's great. Do you want to be a, meme lord, like a lot of the great ones online that make jokes? That's great. Figure out where you want to fit into the ecosystem and just be very thoughtful and learn. I am always a big believer that I love starting new things because I suck at it when I start. Like if I go learn a new sport, I suck, but then I get to get better. And so I think this is just like anything else. Like you start out, nothing, you're learning. Yeah. Go to all the resources you can, like Twitter Spaces being the best one. That's how I learned. When I started out, some of the people I've become friends with, which I'm still floored of, my Coffee with Captain co-host, Chris Jordan, Josh Ong, Baron Von Hustle. I would show up to their spaces. I would go up to stage. I would muster up all the courage I could, and I would ask what felt like the dumbest questions, and they would answer in the nicest way and treat me with such respect. Yeah. That is the way you learn to me. And for me, ask questions, show up, consume content, learn what you're getting into, and then you can start playing the game.
Yeah, fear is just an illusion. I mean, obviously, there are times that you should be cautious or concerned, but I love what you just said. I mustered up the courage, and yet everybody who's tuning in today, you are one of the most on-demand Twitter Space hosts, whether it's big organizations like On-Chain Monkey, which is doing incredible things in the space, but you also mentioned Josh Ong, who's going to be coming on later this month. I'm really excited. I had a great conversation offline with him. So it's really cool of all the strategy and technique. But I was just talking to my friend Matt Swayze, who's in on Twitter Spaces today, and we were talking about it. And I was saying, so first off, they launched a really great project X First on Multiverse X, which is the Elrond. It was renamed. And I said, what I'm looking for, where I'm really, really bullish and excited, not from a money standpoint where I'm going to sell something to make money unless I absolutely need it to feed my family. And I do want to talk about your Twitter Spaces today, but I said, I get really excited when I see different PFPs consistently in a Twitter Spaces that will tell me who's engaging, what communities are most plugged in. And then also the conversation. So I want to talk today, right now, about the conversation you had this morning. You had an artist on, I'm forgetting his name.
Crypto Painter. Yeah, Richard. Yep.
Crypto Painter. I loved what he had to say. Tell me some of the alpha insight that he gave, because he made a lot of really great points that I'm actually going to go back probably later and listen to it. But if you can kind of give us some keynotes from today's spaces, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, like with Richard, like the key point, Crypto Painter on Twitter is, and this is I will give this as an overarching now. He gave a lot of insight into like what he's building, how he's doing it. But I would say I took two insights out of today. The first insight is be yourself in whatever you're doing, because there's only one of you, and be authentic to yourself. So there's nobody quite like Richard, the type of art he's creating, the things he's doing. And he, there's a lot of people who try to copy what others are doing. And an example of this on a macro level is a lot of people have tried to copy the success of Bored Apes. Well, what we found is that, one, there's only ever going to be one Yuga Labs, right? I mean, could be other big ones that, big fundraising rounds that come out. But like at the end of the day, the way they've done things has been unique to them. And a lot of people try to do this big, mysterious copycat of Yuga Labs and how they have like this FOMO they create and what they do. What we're seeing is the NFTs that are really in the NFT projects and brands that are really starting to take off actually are the opposite of that, where they have the most transparent leaders, right? So what do we see? Moonbirds, Kevin Rose, Justin, always on spaces, talking, holding town halls regularly. We see Pudgy Penguins taking off. Luca Nets is another one. You should get Luca on the show, by the way, if you want to have a great one. Luca is fantastic, and he's super open, and he would totally do it. And he's he's building, he's thoughtful, he's taking that, turning it around. He's out there all the time. Again, Ray, 9gag CEO for Memeland. What's he doing? He's out there talking. What we're seeing, Frank and Kevin from D-Gods, right? The list goes on and on. So I guess my point is, by the way, Kevin and Frank are another two who would probably come on who are great. You should reach out to.
Yeah, sure. By the way, I'm just going to throw this out. Chill for just a second, because this is your stage today. We actually did a bunch of tweets saying, "Hey, come on, I'll drink out of a boot." Like I want to talk to Frank, because Frank made the move and he made the move from, or he's making the move currently from Solana to Polygon, I believe, if I'm correct.
He's making, so DeGods are moving to Ethereum and Utes are moving to Polygon. It's the first major profile picture that's going on there that I'm aware of anyway.
Okay. Yeah, no, we would love to have him on. And again, any connections that you make or any connections I can help you to make, I mean, that's what we do in this space, and that's what this platform represents. And I'm grateful to be able to host that. So absolutely. And by the way, Tony, can you do a quick screen share? So on the spaces today, on Coffee with Captain, with co-host NFT Bark, I would love for you guys to go and follow Crypto Painter. He had so many brilliant things to say. A humble student, a humble teacher, and I really just a lot of respect. And so that's why when I'm in the car dropping my son off, I'm tuning into you guys. I'm also tuning into some other spaces as well, but I really want to focus on you. But it just, again, the alpha on that conversation today is worth people going back to listen. When you think about the move for DeGods or from Frank, you know, doing Utes to Polygon and then doing DeGod to Ethereum, where does that leave Solana? I mean, we know we have the Boink meme token. It kind of makes me happy because I have a decent Solana bag, and we're going to have Easy Eats Bodega come on next week. He's launching a project on Solana. What are your thoughts and psychology around that? Because when you look at prior tweets of his, respectfully, again, I did a lot of due diligence because I'd love to have him on. You know, prior tweets was Solana's it. This is, you know, great platform. And I think it is. But why do you think, what do you think was the preimpetus of this? Do you think it was challenges with the network sometimes shutting down? Do you think it was, you know, the cause of SBF? What are your thoughts around that?
So we were super lucky. They made the announcement on Christmas. I was actually flying on Christmas, and the next day we had Kevin on the show because Kevin's a friend of myself and Captain, and so we both actually, because we weren't as connected because I was flying, we both independently reached out, and he was like, yeah, absolutely. So he popped on. So there's a few things that went into it. Number one, I would say they were at various times like 60% of the volume on, I think 60% of the volume on Solana. So there's not a lot of room to grow there, right? Like, while it's good for the chain, it's not necessarily good for your collection. And it actually might not be good for the rest of the collections on the chain because you might need them to sort of get out of the way in order to stop dominating, right? People have said, and I reject the premise, people have said Bored Ape Yacht Club is bad for ETH. But, you know, or bad for other ETH projects because they just dominate, which, again, I reject that premise. I think they've done more, but it's been said. And I think with Solana, doing as much business as they did on there, and also what they wanted to accomplish overall with their ecosystem doesn't make a lot of sense, right? The top PFP projects, at the end of the day, ETH is sort of the place that they are stored. And so I think with DeGods going to ETH, it made a lot of sense, right? It puts them in that same conversation with, you know, Bored Ape Yacht Club, Azuki, Doodles, and Moonbirds, and, you know, all the other ones. It's sort of like the premier. I mean, there's a reason why Danny Yang loves building on ETH from On-Chain Monkey, and Danny Yang is as OG as they come, the founder there. The Polygon move, I think, is just a really innovative thing to try something new. Like, Solana didn't have a lot of PFPs in volume before DeGods were on there, and they helped build that up. Them building an incubator that for sort of like within Utes that could ultimately live on Polygon makes sense. They also have talked about Polygon being sort of, or Utes being sort of their rewards-based PFP. So effectively, you like stake your Ute, you earn these points, and they want those points. From what I understand, I'm not putting words in Kevin's mouth, but like they want their points to be like used to like buy, you know, brand partnerships that they have and other things like that. Like if they do a partnership with Coca-Cola, like you get something from there, or Delta, they get something from there.
Right.
It's a lot. It seems to make a lot of sense to do that on a network like Polygon because of the microtransactions and what they've done there. But number two, because Polygon has a lot of the heavy hitters, right? You're talking about Disney, you're talking about Reddit, you're talking about Starbucks. The list goes on and on and on. DraftKings, Instagram, right. All them. And Ryan, the CEO there, he's not shy about making those introductions. So if Utes wants to have audience with Starbucks, or if they want to have audience with, you know, Disney, they're going to be able to get that to their Web3 team through the Polygon team. So I think that there's a lot of advancements. And the third thing, which they aren't afraid to talk about, is they got a large grant to go there. Now, people fudded this as if this isn't how normal business operates. But frankly, when large businesses switch their providers, they're often offered large grants and deals in the regular business world. And so that made a lot of sense that it was par for the course. And it was weird that people flooded it because here they are getting an influx of likely millions of dollars without having to take any money out of the ecosystem or from their holders. So to me, those reasons all added up. And look, I'm bullish on bold strokes and I'm bullish on thoughtful founders, and they put a lot of thought and intention to this move before they did it.
That's three incredibly powerful points as to why Frank and Kevin are leaving Solana. And it's not personal to Solana, but the diversification and Polygon and Ethereum getting the benefit of his collection and having room to grow, I think was like that first point that you made. And again, I'll go back and listen to it. You know, trends that were, when you speak of FUD, right? Oh, FUD, right? Trends in 2021 are going to be vastly different from what they were in 2022. And then what will work in 2023 that did not work before? You know, this, my friend, is probably the most optimistic question I can ask. Are we maturing, and have we gotten away from the word FUD? Because when I think of FUD now, not that I'm going to come on my podcast for, to speak negatively about somebody, but there was an article that was published by a very respected female in the space, and I reposted it. I didn't tag that individual, but it was a powerful story on bullying and about artists having recognition and about respect. And that individual came and turned that corner. And so before, that person would have probably been shunned and being like, you're fudding. So do we look at this space, my optimistic question, viewers, are we looking at this space as maturing? Because you said the first thing that people can do, anybody that wants to learn, you don't need to go and have instant gratification and oxytocin hits from buying, which we'll talk a little bit about MetaMask, hot and cold wallets and minting wallet. We'll get into that in a little bit. But are we at a place where where the maturity of our space is going to happen right before our eyes, and can it happen sooner than 5 years, according to you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we're maturing as a space just because I think the bear market has forced that. I think that a lot of the people who are doing a lot of the shenanigans in this world can't operate the same way they were before because of the bear, right? It's not as profitable. It's not as fun. It doesn't work quite as well. I think we're always going to see people overreacting to certain things. Like, I still am surprised the way some founders get treated so inhumanely when they make a decision. Because I mean, I sent a message when Moonbirds went fully on chain, and they had the opportunity to bring you on chain. The amount of work that Harry, she sort of like leads that operation for the proof team. She's incredibly smart. She leads this amazing thing where they're going on chain and they're doing all these different like fun tech things. And then people just sort of crapped all over it, or certain people did. A lot of times non-holders, which is not a surprise. And it's a bummer because I think it's always going to happen with tribalism. It's always going to happen with certain people who they feel slighted, or they want things to go a certain direction, or for people holding it, a lot of people just want a bag they can sell, like Doodles saw it when they did Space Doodles. They wrapped an NFT to do something incredible and give it attributes and all these other things, but it didn't give you a new NFT to sell, and they got fudded for it, right? Because they didn't just drop their holders something they could make a bag off of. And so I think you're always going to have those aspects where there's financial interests involved. But I do think we're maturing as a space on the whole, as far as people acting better. The bad actors are finding the door a little bit more because there's not as much money to be made. I think a lot of the good actors are getting a light shine on them a little more. And so I think that that's where I ultimately see this thing going. And I think that we are maturing as a space.
Yeah, transparency, honesty, and truth. When you think about DeGods going over to Ethereum, and it's sitting in someone's phantom wallet, the idea of the bridge being able to connect over, is that process, do you think, is going to be easy? I'm asking more of a technical question selfishly. I'm curious.
Yeah, I imagine it's going to be, I don't know how they'll do it. I don't know if they will have a process by which you burn the NFT and it creates a new one on Ethereum. That would probably be the easiest way to do it with a cross-chain move. Look, here's the thing. Everything that Frank and Kevin have built has had a strong eye on user experience. When I got a DeGods tube, it's like you get a tube, it went through this claw machine, it was this crazy like animation. When you burned it, it was a crazy animation and the music and everything. And so, and not only that, the intentionality of the art, everything they do is intentional and thoughtful. So I would be shocked if their UX is anything below top notch and stellar when they decide to make that ultimate move over and when people ultimately bridge.
I love that. Currently, what opportunities are you spotting? What trends as it relates to NFT communities? Again, we both agree that builders are building and they're connecting on Twitter Spaces. But when you're thinking about NFT communities, artists, what are some of the, without specifically naming the communities, because we're going to get into some of your favorite communities in a second, which are some of mine as well. What are some of the trends that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think like trends or opportunities is a good question. I mean, I think I'm going to take this in maybe a different direction than you intended. To me, the opportunity, if you're listening to this right now or you're watching this right now, your opportunity is, do you want to work in this industry for the rest of your life, or do you want to work in tech for the rest of your life? Because right now, everybody who's listening to this or everybody who hears this, you had the absolute ingenuity to set up a Coinbase or whatever kind of account you did, send money to a MetaMask, write down a 24-word phrase, set up a Phantom wallet, all those things. You have bought, sold, and traded in the ecosystem. Right now, you have a skill set that is missing from the world of Web 2 and for the people who are coming over from Web 1 and Web 2. So what I would say is the opportunity I see right now is start figuring out, if you want to work in this world, what you want to do and how you can make it happen. Because if you don't, somebody who's less qualified, less smart, and less experienced is going to come around and they're going to decide to do it before you. And so my big thing about opportunity right now, I think the biggest opportunity, which is the window is going to shut in the next few years. Certainly, I would say in the next 18 months, that window is going to be a lot harder to crack. You are early. You have the opportunity. To me, being early isn't making the big bag. Congrats if you did. To me, being early means that if this is what you want to do, I want to work in tech for the rest of my life. It's one of the reasons why I take my credibility. When people ask like about me, I want them to say that I'm kind and I want them to say that I'm credible. Those two things are very important to me. I'm not saying that like that I don't go out of my way to try to, overly do that, right? But that's who I want to be. And the reason is because I want to work in this industry for the next rest of my life. I want to work in tech. I've never had more fun in my life. I'm working more hours and harder than ever before, and I've never been happier. So my opportunity I see, like to me, the alpha is if you want to work in this industry, you probably have a skill set from your current life that applies over to this world. Figure out where that can plug in, and whether it's and the last thing about that is no job is too small when you start that. Like a lot of people say like, well, I do this. I don't want to go be a mod. Well, guess what? I have friends who started as mods who now have big jobs. There are people who are community managers, who are leaders, who are getting full-time salaries because they started as a Discord mod, who they started working and helping with clips. The guy who does clips for Coffee with Captain, Mackie, he sent us a DM one day and said, hey, is there anything I can do for y'all? And we said, look, do you do clips? And he's like, funny you say that. I actually do. First, Mackie did him for free. Then we asked to hire him. And then we asked to pay him more because he was doing such a good job. And he had the ingenuity to do it. And he was providing his clips over the weekend of other Twitter spaces to share on DGen Network, as well as our own. That's the sort of thing where you have an opportunity. What is your unique skill set? How can you provide value? What can you bring? Figure out where you can provide value. Figure out your skill set. Do the work. No job is too small. Like now is the time. So that's where I see the opportunity right now.
I love it. And I love covering tech. So I'm right with you, my friend, and just watching the space grow. And we're going to talk about the DGen Network because I thought it was really cool that you're doing. We're going to share that page in just a second. When I think of a digital asset, I think of direct ownership, something that cannot be debated. I have access to this because I have a private key that holds the location, specific location on the blockchain. So long as the private key is in my control, the data is stored on the blockchain that verifies it's mine. True ownership. And I'm really excited to see how these, how social media, like when you look at a Facebook or an Instagram, we're on someone else's platform. But when we go decentralized on social media platforms that will be on the blockchain, we're going to have a level of ownership stake in that, and it's going to change our entire world. Is there anything that you would add to that statement? Because I was thinking that to me is what has me so excited. That's probably the pinnacle paragraph for me that really draws me into this Web3 space.
Oh, you are speaking my language right now, because with me, when I think about social media, I think the gated nature and lack of portability is absolutely anti-Web3. And the ones and the social media sites that ultimately accept that and make things more portable work. I said this when Elon Musk banned other social media links and he ultimately brought it back. But it's like, I'm sorry, like portability is the key of Web3. The fact of the matter is like you're building your own brand on Twitter, right? Let's say you build up, 1 million followers on Twitter with this show and become this, right? How well does that transfer over to YouTube? How well does that transfer over to, I know we're live there now, but like how well does it transfer to Facebook and other places? Not super well. No. Portability is a major hole in the game of Web3. Now imagine if all of your tweets, history, whatever came over, because when you post your pictures on Facebook, and I'm blanking on who it was, but my buddy Scott Commoners, who I'm writing the book with, had brought this analogy to the book about Imagine if you put a bunch of posters on your wall, but then when you left, you didn't get to take it with you. That's effectively what you're doing on Facebook or social media. Or if they change their terms of service, it would change, you could see it and all those things.
Yep.
I think portability of information and portability of social status is something that is going to be huge in the future.
How did IRL events, and I know this will probably be a very interesting, answer, and I think it's it's a common sense one. And by the way, shout out to Don Paulo. I love you, my friend. It's great to see you in the spaces. How did IRL events help your brand growth?
For me, I don't know if IRL has been as effective as online. I mean, IRL is like my favorite thing, one of my favorite things to do, because to me, that is where sort of the magical connection you get online, you can't duplicate that. Or the magical connection you get IRL, you can't duplicate online, and vice versa. Online is awesome. Look, Twitter Spaces right now, we're in a room with 27, 30 people that I never would have connected with otherwise. Behind PFPs, like this is a metaverse light, and it's awesome. It's awesome that I'm connecting with people all over the world I never would have connected with, and I dig that. But I mean, to the counter of that, the magic of meeting someone online, the magic of having that conversation with someone, it's just, excuse me, it's just something that you can't duplicate. I don't know that it's helped my brand in any way, shape, or form outside of the fact that a lot of people learn I'm exactly the same person online as I am in person. And that's just because
that's exactly what I wanted to hear from you. It's not because, again, Web3 is the internet, your PFP representation. So for me, when I'm connecting with you now is the same person I expect to see when we're shaking hands or having a beer or a coffee, because you and I both love coffee. And offline, I'll share some of my favorite coffees. I like gourmet coffee, maybe a little snobby, because we are going to talk about Starbucks. Much respect. And actually, Don Paulo actually mentioned portability, being able to take your content. You don't own your content. Mark Zuckerberg owns it. Other social platforms own it. So whatever you create, I'm so grateful, because when I create this podcast and I create a write-up on what you're doing, I'm going to be able to transfer that to my own website. Now, Tony, if you can do a quick screen share, I want to share the DGen network. I'll just kind of overall cover and say that I went through some of the articles, the videos, the podcast, the merch about DGen. I love how the website looks. I like the ease of use, and you have a lot of great information. Kind of give me an overview of the DGen network, why it's so important, and what you're doing in 2023 as we lead the way in this Web3 space.
Yeah. So before we get into DGen, something you said there, just to touch back on it, you mentioned you don't own your stuff, Mark Zuckerberg does. And that's why, to me, the difference between Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3 is pretty fundamental. Web 1, the first game-changing technology, you were the customer, right? You were able to go online and buy stuff and interact with others. In Web 2, you were the product, because you put your information out there and they quite literally sold it for advertising and made money off you as a product. In Web 3, you are the brand. And I think that that's the powerful transition. So I appreciate you bringing that up as far as the piece with, you don't own your information, Mark Zuckerberg does, and they quite literally sell it everywhere they can. Now, DGen Network, that's one for us that, it started as this idea that there wasn't a decentralized media company, back, year and a half ago or whatever it was when we first were getting started in the space. Met my buddy Joe Bunchu, who actually is the person who he co-founded Forum 3, who's bringing Starbucks and NFTs, super smart guy, the most underrated person in Web3. And, Joe, he, him and I got together, and then we ultimately brought in some other co-founders and said, we need decentralized media. Started out as articles, and our Discord started out as article writers. But what's funny is, in typical Web3 fashion, because one of the key tenets of Web3 is you can evolve based on who your community is. Our community turned into just that, a community. We started a Discord to talk about who's writing what, and had calls about what our plans were to cover what. And it turned into people talking about alpha and helping each other out, teaching people how to mint from the contract. And so DGen turned into a community, and that's what it's become. It's a token-gated community now, and it's a token-gated community based around content creators. So, we have a variety of shows that are coming out. We have us, we have DSPN, which is a sports show. We have Lunch Break with a friend, Riggs, who started up that show. We have Mint Condition, which is Spaces 3 times a week. So we have Coffee with Captain, which is mine 8 a.m. A variety of shows that we do. Alpha Afternoons is amazing. So we have this whole group of shows that we put together. on the whole group of shows we put together on the network. And the goal is just to create the best decentralized content network with the most sort of different varying perspectives. We'll throw the occasional IRL event. We've done a couple of live coffee with captains, which were pretty fun at events, which have been good experiences, which have gotten pretty good attendance to. And we had a space that held 100 capacity. And we planned it very last minute and NFT NYC, and we had 150 people show up. We had one that we probably had about 100 people show up in Art Basel in Miami. So we turned into, this decentralized community-based network where everybody has a voice. Anybody who wants to create content, we sort of empower them to do it where it makes sense if they fit the brand. And then our goal as the leaders is when we go out and we get advertisers, we had a sponsorship with DraftKings. We had sponsorships and partnerships with Mintify and Zed Run. For us, what happens is we take those sponsorships, and regardless of who gets them, so if you're a show that gets them, you get, sort of a finder's fee or whatever, but then the whole network spreads the wealth. If your show does the advertisement, you get paid. Now, we're not making money hand over fist. We are making smaller amounts, but the goal is to continue to level up and bring in bigger advertisers that we're able to then, distribute so that everybody can win together. I will say this, I'm a big believer that leaders eat last, which is why, as a leadership group, we don't take a paycheck. When we minted, we didn't take a paycheck. That money went towards hiring somebody to get special allow lists for our gated Discord and hiring salespeople so that our shows can be more profitable. So that's sort of the way that we've run DGen Network. And we have, NFT Night Shift is a show that's like the opposite of Coffee with Captain in a lot of ways. It's more degeneracy, but that's fun. We want to have variety. So we just try to get a variety that covers the different course of the day, try to have different Twitter spaces because we're super bullish on social audio. That's where we see the future being for a lot of things because, look, I mean, how many times have you listened to a Joe Rogan podcast and he's had a great guest on and you've been able to pop up and ask a question? The answer is zero. But social audio allows you to do that. So we've been leaning into social audio. We're bullish on it. In 2023, I think you'll see a big bet on social audio. I think you'll see us continue to grow and hopefully do more IRL events. And the goal is just continue to expand the network and the community.
I love that you said leaders eat last. And what you do is you invest and reinvest to build. And I'd also say at this time, it's an opportunity market, not a bear market. This is a market to build, and I don't want to sound funny, but if last year I had reached out to you, depending on how busy you were, I might not have had the opportunity to get you on, or maybe even have the chance for you to connect me with Frank, Frank. I mean, and Kevin, that those conversations would not have happened. And so in this opportunity market, people that were, I don't want to say higher on the playing field, it's now come down a little bit to be able to match, being able to have conversations, make connections, and truly network. And then I would also just say one last thing to the IRL point, just coming back to that. I feel that you're right. Everything contingents in Web3, but when you go out and you meet somebody, you make them even more so a raving fan of you. And I understand why now, even more clearly, why you have been so on demand. And humbly, it doesn't even affect you. Like, yeah, that's right, Craig, because humility is key. And by the way, we're going to talk a little bit about merchandise. I think that's really important. And shout out to Spoiled Banana Society. They sent me a hoodie, a hat. So I'm getting a lot of free merch and great project. And the Bored Ape, Mutant Ape, Yuga Labs. All right, so let's get to that on these different communities, right? What do all of these following communities share? Bored Ape Yacht Club, Doodles, Proof Moonbirds, which we just talked about a little bit, D-Gods and Utes, really cool to understand how they're delineating Polygon and Ethereum, so thank you. Class was in session for me. And of course, one of my favorite communities where we had Amanda Terry from On-Chain Monkey, where my monkey, my OCM, my Genesis, ate a D1 pop, and we created a Karma Monkey live on the podcast. That was really cool. We weren't doing Twitter Spaces at the time, I don't believe. But what do all these communities right here have in common?
I love all those communities, I think, is what they have in common. Those are some of my faves.
Outside of that, right, when you think about strategy, what have they all done similar? And then obviously everything has been vastly different. We talked about how Proof of Moonbirds, when they went kind of away and they did Creative Commons license, COO, I believe, and everybody was fudding, oh, where's my drop so I can go and sell it and paper hand things, and they didn't do that. On-Chain Monkey has taken the time to really grow and build a community off of their battle cry, Rise. And that's another way that I connect with everybody in the community is I make sure that when I see an On-Chain Monkey and I have just a few minutes, I just hit a bunch of iRises because I want to love on that community. That's one that I'm very much focused in on. But what have they from a strategy standpoint, maybe a technical standpoint, what do they all have in common, more granular, other than we love them? Because I do too. I agree with you.
I mean, to me, it's like intentionality and thoughtful leadership is the thing that I always let Matt back to with those. So I want leaders that are intentional in their decisions and thoughtful in their decisions. They're not just throwing spaghetti against a wall, which, look, I want experimentation, but I don't want experimentation for the sake of experimentation. I want experimentation that has a thought and a learning from it. And when you talk about any one of those, look, Frank and Kevin moving D-Gods and Utes over to Polygon and ETH, that is a thoughtful experiment. Various things that Danny Yang has done. I don't think On-Chain Monkey gets enough credit for the hub that they built on their website and what they've done there, the banana economy, the fact that Twitter bananas were a thing. They led the charge in the off-chain token obsession that's happening with a lot of communities right now. Moonbirds introduced Hoots recently. On-Chain Monkey has had bananas for basically since the inception. And the idea of off-chain bananas is something that is really thoughtful and has worked really well. And I stand by the fact that their off-chain bananas has more utility than 99% of fungible tokens. And so what I like about all the leaders you mentioned is all of the leaders that you mentioned, or all of the projects you mentioned, have leaders that are thinking through how to do things differently. Bored Apes don't get enough credit for the fact that they will try a mechanic and nobody's done it before, or nobody's done it before at scale, right? Now, they didn't start the IP rights thing. They copy-pasted Hashmask's IP rights, which they openly admit to, and they've said so, and Hashmask is cool with that and all that. But like the way that they've encouraged IP rights, the way that they've done thoughtful IRL, the way that they did a burn mechanism on a burnable NFT to create a one-to-one match with a different art style like they did with Mutants that everybody copied. The way Doodles is thinking about scaling through Doodles 2, which is going to be very similar to the Roblox meta that we're seeing with a lot of kids and many adults right now. Those sort of thoughtful leadership pieces are what I think about. I think, one, thoughtful leadership, two, strong brand. Doodles has a mission and vision statement. Not everybody has that. All of these brands know who they are, they know the direction they're going, and they have thoughtful leaders to execute on it. And whether they're successful or not, we will see, but they have the best opportunity to do so with that, and that's what I look for.
I love that. Tony, let's do a quick screen share. Without saying NFT, without saying digital asset, Starbucks has making a move into the metaverse and Web3. Tell me a little bit about your thoughts around Starbucks, the rewards program, where they are currently, and where do you see them going in the coming years?
Yeah, so for reference, I am literally drinking out of a Starbucks water cup right now. I am a big Starbucks super fan, so have to apologize to Don Paulo in the chat. I know you're not a fan. Shout out Brooklyn Coffee. That's actually great. I have family in Brooklyn. I've been, that's awesome. That said, I think what Starbucks is doing is brilliant. I am in the closed beta. I may or may not be doing some work with them or have before. More to come on that at a future date. But and my friend Joe, he co-founded the company that is bringing them in. So I have those levels of bias that I want to lay out, being a Starbucks brand loyalist super fan before any of this happened, Joe being on the team and me being in that closed beta. Now, what I love about them is I think they are, quite frankly, having the opportunity to revolutionize what brand loyalty is. Right now, loyalty is just simply one direction. It is one way. It is you go, you purchase something, it's very transactional. Right. To make it less transactional, you have Starbucks where it's like they want to deepen your relationship with the brand. They want to build a community. They want people to understand what they're about. So thinking about it, the way Starbucks Odyssey works is you go and you earn these things called stamps through a series of journeys. So a journey might be, compete in the Starbucks for Life game, which is a game they do every year, buy certain beverages in store, take a virtual tour of their coffee farm, answer this Starbucks trivia. And then you complete those and you get a stamp. That stamp is an NFT. You can migrate off and sell on OpenSea. You could sell on the marketplace they've created, which is super easy on Nifty Gateway, or you can just own it and that boosts your loyalty score. But by making that loyalty more two-way, people are deepening their relationship with the brand. They are continuing to give their customers loyalty rewards, but they're able to own their loyalty versus having it be more one way inside the Starbucks app. I think that has applications across the board for other brands like Disney or you name it. There are so many that have the opportunity to have a major loyalty program where they can make money buying and selling for a percentage of marketplace in perpetuity with these NFTs. Somebody can come in and buy those NFTs to help boost their loyalty and make more, and and then the person on the selling side can make money. So there's a lot of ways you can sort of play that game, whether it's buying kind of to get it up, playing the actual game to earn your loyalty, or buying because you want to ultimately sell it on the open market. So that two-way interaction, it's sort of two-way interaction with the brand and the actual customer is a great opportunity to deepen that relationship. So I'm super bullish on what Starbucks is doing and a big fan of how they're growing it.
I love that. And I want to do another screen share because I want to talk to you about the first ever Harvard Business Review around NFTs, how NFTs create value. First off, I love this art piece. So by the way, who's that art piece by? It's really cool.
That's Vinny Hagar. I love Vinny Hagar. A big fan of Vinny.
Oh, that's awesome. And so tell me, what was maybe three things, right? I don't want to drain too much brain energy from you today, but three important things that people will pull from this Harvard Business Review. And by the way, later I do a thread recap. I try my best to do a thread recap on every guest. So I go back, I listen, I take notes, and then I create a nice thread on today's conversation. But what are three most important things from the Harvard Business NFT Review, the first ever, that people can take away just in hearing that right now?
Yeah, the goal of that article was to make it so that anybody could pick it up and hand it to it, particularly because it is Harvard Business Review. I mean, it was certainly focused on a lot of the people who read that, which a lot of times are executives or leaders within like Fortune 500s. But the goal, I think, at the high level is, one, what is an NFT? Two, why are they getting so much hype? And three, how can they create value and be used? And so we kind of tried to drive that. Yeah, one day I'll have to, I mean, the story behind how it was written was kind of crazy. And, but overall it was like, the goal was like, how can we target an audience? And I will say the coolest part about it was that the biggest thing Scott and I were like kind of worried about was we're like, okay, we're writing this with a business audience in mind, but is the NFT community that we've been degenning with for the past 9 months going to think this is good, right? And getting the wide reception from the community and hearing people say, I shared it with my uncle, I shared it with my father, I shared it with my friend, and having it be successful, that was probably the most rewarding part of it, because it's just, that's what we were going for. We really wanted to make sure that the community thought that we represented them well, and that people reading it understood what NFTs are. And I think we succeeded in that. So it was a great opportunity.
I like the idea that you just said, I took a conscientious risk. I was concerned that our current community would appreciate and respect and not feel like, oh, we sold out and we did this Harvard article, but yet not only did they appreciate it, they shared it as well. So we're gonna have a little bit of fun today, right? So we're gonna now get into the gift contest portion of it. We've covered a lot with you. Is there anything that, in the back of your mind that you wanted to cover today before we get to the gift contest sponsor giveaways?
No, we're good. Let's do it.
I love it. I love it. So this sponsor contest giveaway, really quick, and I'm going to have you interact with me a little bit, Steve. Just bear with me for a second. If you can go to a quick screen share, Tony. So this is the drivers community. We've got about 11 different points. I usually try to shorten it to 5, but a lot of really cool things are going on. My good friend, Ralph Quintero from the Daily Ralph, a part of the JPEG Morgan group. He has been on the podcast. You can find that on YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify. Great conversation with him. He's heavily involved in this community. He is in an advisory role. I have spoke with the founders. I love what they're doing, the storytelling. So let's get to it. All right. So first is I'm going to be giving out one of these digital assets. I say NFT, I promise not, to one of our lucky listeners. And then also NFT Bark, as a special thank you, I ask that they give you one token into their ecosystem, just because I appreciate you coming on today and giving of your time.
Appreciate
so
that.
That's on that end. But let's talk about why this community to me is special, and we'll also share their OpenSea page. So Drivers is a Genesis collection of 2,888 NFTs. Each character owns their own IP rights. You get access. Number two, you get access to the driver's ecosystem, which includes limited edition merchandise, a graphic novel series, collectibles, utility, which we'll get more specific on, ownership rights, and more will be revealed as they open up their roadmap as they drive the metaverse forward. A well-qualified team is probably number three, is probably one of the most important. Well-qualified team that has worked with the likes of Amazon, Spotify, Peugeot, Honda, Toyota, Cadbury's, Pepsi, Pokemon, 505 Games, and Virgin. In it, various expertise, advertised design, animation, development, analytics, publishing. They have covered the gamut. And again, I spoke directly with leadership. Most of the team has been in Web3 since 2016 with decades of Web2 based experience. The lead artist is Cade, who is behind the Cronut NFT collection featured in Timeout, Hypebeast, and Thrillist, and has worked with large publishing houses. Number five, if you use your DR drivers in their graphic novel series, you get paid as an actor or member of that production. That's what they're working towards, and their big play is with the metadata. You will get royalties if your droid appears in a film as they develop out. And again, this is long-term. The tokens are about $20 at floor in fiat. They also believe in grow together. So one of the things that made me very bullish on what they are doing is that the amount of engagement from their community, they've got a lot of raving fans. I see them quite a bit in Twitter Spaces. Drivers and Tableland rings. So all the rigs. So they're going to have rigs with their drivers. And they're going to be able to have a pilot in them, so you can use an existing NFT as your pilot without changing the Genesis metadata, which is really important. Getting a little more in depth, I would say the platform takes the smart contract data and converts it into SQL tables. I'm still learning about this for Web 2 developers. So any of your techie heads, you might appreciate what I just said. It's idea for us to be able to play around with certain traits in additions to the core NFTs. The coming race pass as our way to add certain benefits to the PFP without messing with the original time-based, location-based, and participation-based rewards asset of your PFP. So they want to keep everything original. They don't want to mess with that particular metadata, because as this project has the potential to grow in storytelling, in the anime of art, in the talent of the team, they want to keep everything original. So guys, what I highly recommend, if you could do it back to the quick screen share, you can go on and check them out on OpenSea. You can see their activity. Again, I'd like to see less listed. They've done 80 ETH currently in volume. I like the fact that the unique owners are around 35%. I do want to get your take real quick, though, NFT Bark. Dune Analytics, are you a fan of that?
I think it has some value, yeah.
Okay. All right. Interesting enough. Where do you like to grab your analytics when you're looking at the technical analysis of a digital asset community? See, it's going to be hard to take that out of me.
I'm very bad at technical analysis. I tend to I look at the kind of like standards. OpenSea is still the top place for volume, so I'll use that. Dune's good. It has, some flaws here and there just based on like what you're tracking as far as OpenSea volume versus other volume, what's wash trading, what's not. So, I tend to look at things like, NFT Inspect, which hopefully gets saved because it looks like it was talking about shutting down. That would be, a place that I tend to get a lot of data because I look at unique profile picture. If you're a profile picture project, then you should have a lot of unique profile pictures. It was one of the canaries in the coal mine that I love Renga. I think Renga's beautiful art, and I think their tying with 10 KTF is huge. But when they ran up like 4 ETH, it was like, okay, but they have like 300 profile pictures on Twitter. Like, that's not great. And there might have been some data flaws there I heard about. So yeah. I don't know. It's kind of varies depending on what analysis I'm trying to do. So it's like different data sources for different things, if that makes sense. And then people like NFT statistics, Sam is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you on all those points. And by the way, big shout out to Captain, big fan of yours, my friend. Thanks so much for, hopping in and listening to this conversation with your co-host. I got to steer the wheel with him today, and I'm truly honored for that. So NFT Bark, pull out your Twitter Spaces, look who's in there, and just at random, pick one person who you want to be the winner, and we'll DM them and make sure that they get a token in their wallet. And listen, it's nice to, along the way, as thank yous, like a bouquet of roses or saying, hey, Steve, here's the coffee. That's all that it represents. Nothing more, nothing, no expectations. But please feel free to pick somebody at random. I'll let you pick the winner.
I'll tell you what I'll do right now is, for anybody who's listening, pull a, I'm gonna flip it up because I'll make it random in a different way, but it'll be good for the space. Toss a GM in the comments, and I will pick one of the GMs. The comments help run up the space a little bit. It helps it in the Twitter algorithm in the future and stuff like that. So I'll pick a GM in the next like 30 to 40 seconds as I see it coming on to people as we go. So that'll be because I was gonna pick someone, but they had who had hit with the GM. So I will randomly refresh the page, and when I see a GM on the Twitter space, it has to be on the actual official Twitter link. I will I'll pop one away. I'm gonna go with Bear Claw. Bear Claw was first, super fast. Bear Claw wins the prize.
I see Bear Claw. Okay, cool. So Bear Claw, I'm following you. I'm going to connect you directly with the driver's team. So I appreciate that. And then obviously I'll connect you in DM as well, NFT Bark. And again, that's sort of my bouquet to you, or a fresh coffee in the morning.
What if I picked Mrs. NFT Bark hit a GM 3 seconds ago? That would have been a sham. I saw she hit a GM as you're going. That would have been a
here's the good news.
Damn pick.
It's a shared token. You know, you guys get a shared token. Big shout out to Miss NFT Bark for taking such good care of today's guest. I mean, truly honored. And more importantly, I think you're doing so many incredible things in this space. I want to continue to be a great supporter of you and Captain, and continue to support those morning spaces. I mean, my time slot is usually going to be around 12:30 once a week. If I hop into spaces, it's to connect and build relationships. I absolutely love and respect what you're doing. Please let us know how we can help to continue to help what you're doing in this space continue to thrive with more opportunity, health, and happiness for you and your family, my friend. Happy and a healthy new year.
Appreciate that. Yeah, didn't start off the best wave, had the flu for 3 days, but I think we're on the tail end of it. Like you said, thanks to Mrs. NFT Bark for she's the MVP, helping me, because when you have kids and a 90-pound Labrador, you need as much help as you can get when you're rocking against the flu.
We have the 10-pound dog, so we don't have the 90-pound Labrador, but it's good to know. And please just stay on after. We're just going to close out now. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for watching CraigO's Crypto Corner, the best in Web3, blockchain, NFT, and cryptocurrency technologies. CraigO signing off.